And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Hit and Sit show, number 29 on your docket here. I am your host, David Bear, pitcher for Siteman Pure, a swing Suncoast. I've got a little bit of a different panel here today, slightly different than usual. We're only going to have two guests with us. Our first being, of course, DW, who's always here from conferenceussa.com, the Swami of softball. And then a new face, you hear his voice quite often on conference primetime with USSSA Live each week, but it's Eric McCarthy. He's the host of Conference Primetime with USSSA Live. He's a lot of times doing things behind the scenes for us, but we're glad to have him here. Our show is going to be a little bit different today from a standpoint of how we're going to run things. It's a little bit less of a round table, a little bit more of a debate. We're going to get into a couple of things here from the major team divisions, who's the best defensive team in the country right now, and then a little bit of the roster moves and the pitching carousel that's going on right now in Conference USSSA softball. A lot of different stuff here. We are going to be live here on YouTube. I believe we're going to be live on the USSSA Facebook page. Once that's up and running, if you have questions, put them in there. If we have time later at the end, we'll try to get to them. Just shoot those questions in as much as possible. But first things first, we're going to go into the major division breakdown. We're going to talk about how all the teams are doing, and then maybe give a little bit about what we think is going to happen at the end of the year here. So DW, give us a little bit of a breakdown, and we'll get into a discussion about it.
Yeah, so I took some notes on each of the major teams. We'll start with Resmondo, number one team in the nation, of course. If you can share my screen, you'll see the stats that Eric put together for all of the computer rankings, the actual hitting stats, and basically a breakdown of who beat who, what their record is in class, and things like that. But Resmondo, 4 tournament wins, 12-4 versus the major division, which is by far the best. They have not lost to an A or below team. They finished all 7 tournaments in the top 4. They have a 300-point lead in the standings, which if you win the conference, you get the number 1 seed for the Major World Series. You're automatically home team every game. They have a 736 team on base percentage, which is probably the highest of all time. Also highest of all time, 41.9 runs per 7 innings is what they're averaging. That's got to be a record. They've done it with injuries to Kyle Pearson, who was injured and missed a tournament because he was sick. Everett Williams has the knee problem. Brad Record basically broke his thumb. He's been out. Kevin Bazat having one of the best years of his career. Looks like he's finally recovered from his shoulder surgery last year. Corey Briggs also seems recovered from his neck injury that kind of slowed him the past 2 years. Travis Clark, underrated as a pitcher. He's been getting some big miss hits late in the games. Tyler Marshburn, back-to-back MVPs, Myrtle Beach and Tennessee. This past weekend, 17 for 20, 864 on base percentage, and he only hit 3 home runs while playing a great shortstop. Josh Riley, Kyle Pearson, Bradley Jones, Phil Matt, all vying for the batting title this year. Chad Mullins and Kyle Overstreet have kind of blended in nicely, with Buddy Wolf returning to Resmondo this year, having a solid season. The entire team kind of plays the game, right? They hit base hits when they're supposed to, home runs when they're supposed to. Helmer, he's been calling people out. If you've been watching the condensed games, someone makes a bad error or fields the ball and then drops it, he's been hammering them pretty hard, calling them out. The team doesn't seem to care if they lose a game. They just know they'll roll through the losers bracket right now with their offense. And if they have a negative side, they've lost 3 times to Competitive Edge and 2 to Chick-fil-A. So 5 of their 7 losses to just 2 teams. And the defense we know isn't great, but each player is capable of having a great defensive tournament. So they definitely rely on the offense. Those are all my notes on it. What do you guys think about Resmondo this year?
I just thought of a quick point that I want to jump in on there. As you say that you mentioned Resmondo not being a great defense, at least we didn't think coming into the season they were going to be a great defensive team, but they have really good defense at the key spots. Travis Clark up the middle can still field it. Marshburn, obviously one of the best all around in the game. Bazak getting it done over the middle in Briggs and center. So I think that, you might be a little weak in some other spots, but they're really good in the most important spots to me. So it's hard for me to knock them too much there. But yeah, I mean, you covered pretty much everything there. 85. I don't know if you said it. 85% total win percentage for Resmondo on the year is absolutely absurd. Plus, their strength of schedule is still second in the conference. Monsta has a little bit higher one, 5.08. Resmondo is 4.92. So, I mean, their second toughest schedule out there as well. So it's not like they're playing cookie cutter teams to get there. I mean, they are beating everybody for sure.
That's 7 losses in 7 tournaments, so they're averaging 1 loss a tournament.
Right, with 4 tournament wins. What was the most? That's already more than somebody won last year, correct? Did they all win 3 last year?
We'd have to take a look, but it's close to as many as anybody won last year for sure.
Right, and they're probably not done.
Probably had 4 or 5.
Yeah, I mean, Brett's got them rolling right now. Even with all the injuries, like you said, competitive edge. I'm surprised to see everybody else has a losing in-class record. Competitive edge 5-6, Monster 6-7, and Juno 2-8. So I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised by that. I think competitive edge is definitely right there. I think Brandon Street's coming back is going to be a big help because he's, in my opinion, one of the 10 best hitters in the game, if not top 5. He's extremely up there, and I think he was batting 8th most of the weekend, but I think he's going to be right up in the middle of that lineup producing runs with Irvine and Honeycutt and Lendensky and all those guys. So I think competitive edge is going to be all right. Thorbarger's been doing a good job. Monster's obviously got to get the pitching worked out, I think, and I don't know what the hunt is there. And I don't know if you guys got any answers for MPT or not, because Pinkham's great. The roster looks great. I think their defense should be pretty good, and they're not scoring runs. So I don't know where they're going there.
Well, I mean, you have still 2 cities between those 2 teams right there, between MPT and Resmondo, right? We just talked about the fact that Resmondo's offense is essentially on a borderline historic level right now. And, we're talking about their defense, and you say, hey, maybe their defense isn't as good as possible, but let's be real. If you're scoring 40 runs a game, I mean, that's a tough number to touch. And most games are going to get 14 home runs. They don't play – you're not going to play a major team every single game. So most games are 14. Then when they get to 16, you get even 2 more chances at another 8 runs right there. I mean, that's a big difference. And, like we talk about Marshburn having back-to-back MVPs. He was a former conference MVP of the entire season. And you have an individual on the team who may be the best – You arguably had the best hitter on the planet in Josh Riley, and right now he might be the second best hitter on that team behind Bradley Jones. I mean, Bradley's got an outside shot of being the first Triple Crown winner since Greg Cannell did it back-to-back years. And, I mean, again, you're talking about another individual right there, Cannell. Cannell's still a fantastic hitter. He might be getting closer to the quote-unquote twilight of his career, but he's still an extremely hard out. And he's not in the top 5 or 6 hitters on that team right now, in my opinion. And I mean, you have nowhere when you go through that lineup as a pitcher. There's nowhere that's like, all right, we got an out coming up right here. We're good. We can pitch around this guy to get. No, there's nowhere. And it's unreal how much better they are this year compared to what we were talking about the same time last year. And it really comes down to the fact that they just outscore you at any given point. They catch routine balls, they outscore you. And when you think that you've got them behind, guess what? They're coming back to hit anyway. I mean, when it comes down to it, slow pitch softball is a hitting game. And Resi right now has put together arguably the best hitting lineup in the country. And stats wise, it looks like it's hard to argue that there's anybody else in the same conversation.
Yeah, and David, you touched on it. People think Resmondo's old. Like I hear comments around the park that, Resmondo's getting older. They're really not. They've kind of filled in with players over the last 3 years. There's kind of been a lot of player turnover there in the last couple of years. And these players, remember the prime in softball is 35, 36 years old. So these guys are not old. Just because Clark and just because Joel makes fun of Clark and Cannell's gray hair doesn't mean these guys are old.
It's a big deal for sure. And DW, you have any notes on? I mean, competitive edge, in my opinion, right now is the number 2. So do you have any notes on them and what they're doing so far?
Yeah, so competitive edge, 37 runs per 7 innings. Second with a 706. I can't even read that. 708 on base percentage as a team. They won dual number 2 in Texas. They're 5-6 versus major teams. Mason Farmer, as you remember, as the backup pitcher, stepped up and won that Texas dual number 2 against Resmondo when Thorbrogger couldn't go because of an injury. Brandon Streets just returned from a hand or wrist injury, whatever it was. He had an 864 on base percentage this past weekend. So he looks like he's midseason form. Mitch Lendensky really setting the table for Tyler Irvine at the top of the order, although I can't say that Mitch has adjusted to that move from center field to left, maybe having some trouble there. Taylor Cobb, 15 for 15 off the bench in Tennessee this past weekend on base percentage. They have elite hitters, but they have imploded defensively at times, and they have not been relentless, right? They have relentless on the back of some of their uniforms. They just haven't been relentless early in the season. They weren't relentless last year early in the season. They were a second-half team, so we'll have to see how that goes. And another negative, they did lose to a B team. They're the only major team to lose to a B team this season.
I mean, Eric, we talked about Resmondo being not afraid to lose a game. Do you think that competitive edge is kind of adjusting to the fact that they're major now? Like the expectation is, oh, we're going to win. And if we lose, it's okay. We're going to outscore everybody in the losers bracket. We might drop down and get an extra 65 at bats this weekend, but we're going to win a bunch of games. I mean, do you think that's part of the problem there?
I jumped the gun a little earlier and covering all the teams a little bit, but you guys might know better than me because DW's there every weekend and you're obviously there when Siteman is playing. To me on camera, it does look like they're pressing a little bit more. They know that the expectations are there for major, and I think that because it's competitive edge, we as a softball community almost expect them to be great, just by how they've played. But last year, around this same time, I feel like even in the AA division, it was similar. Like I know we did the show on this and we brought up all the numbers and like competitive edge until it really came alive the second half of the year last year, especially maybe even the last quarter of the year. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. I think Streets is coming back as big, like I said, and that offense is rolling. They have had a few miscues on defense for sure. I feel like, and maybe this is the plan, I'm not in the dugout, so I'm speaking way above my pay grade here, but Lendensky's hitting a lot of home runs in front of Irvine. That's one of the things I see is just a kind of a random thought about that team. I feel like we should be trying to set the table for Irvine more, and maybe Lendensky at leadoff is, he cranks that swing, right? He's got that closed stance and he really gets into it. Maybe he's not even trying to do it all the time, but he hits a lot of bombs. But I think they are pressing a little bit. I think that is part of it. Brandon Miller, he's going out and he's talking to the umps a lot, and I know you guys are out there trying to work these guys for calls too, right? It's part of the game, and maybe that's what he's doing. But I from an outsider looking in through a live stream camera, it looks like they are pressing a little bit. They are a little frustrated at times and maybe not doing quite what they expected. But then again, it's Brandon Miller. They did the same thing last year. It's all about that second half. It only matters what you do at Worlds, really, and so I think he's going to have them fine. I think that they will be fine. Thorbarger's been doing a good job pitching. I would love to see Farmer more too. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that are, but I know he's young, and inexperienced, and Miller's trying to bring him along and work him in there, probably slowly and not put that pressure on him, right? Because he's such a young kid, but he's got a high ceiling, and I think you got to let the lion out of his cage sometimes, and let that kid go a little bit. He proved he's capable of doing it by winning Texas. So,
yeah, definitely don't disagree from a Mason standpoint there. He's got a very, very high ceiling. We talk about you got to get experience, but you don't want to go too fast, things like that. But realistically, you can get experience by watching other people pitch. There's a whole different ball game between watching someone else pitch, listening to how they're going to approach batters, things like that, as compared to throwing the pitch yourself. knowing, again, like their number one competition right now is Resmondo. You have to figure out a way to get these guys out. Granted, in a stadium, it is, you can't say really easier. You have a little bit more room that they have to square the ball up or cut it just right to get it to go. But, I mean, you still have to get people out. And at the end of the day, that's, I mean, he's doing a really good job of that every time he gets in. He's doing a great job with his role. Thor is doing everything he's supposed to do as a starter. I mean, you know, I think that their biggest problem right now, like DW just touched on, is everybody adjusting to different places defensively. You know, a little bit of rotational type of situation. You know, some of the guys are not performing defensively as well as they should, and routine outs at the major level become 5, 6, 7, 8 runs if you don't make it. So that's a big, big deal for them.
Right. And yeah, I mean, you talk about that too. I mean, just, I can't remember who it was. I know at the Florida Duel, they had a couple of errors that probably cost them a game. You know, I mean, their whole record on a couple of errors could look different right now. You know, a couple of those games, and if you make it through those games and win the next one, you know, we're not even having this conversation about competitive edge. So, yeah, I agree, and I think they're right there. And not to backtrack too much, as you talk about Resmondo with the base hitting too. There was a couple games they lost early, and it was because they were just bullying teams and hitting home runs, and it caught up with them a couple of times. And I think that they made a conscious effort to switch that out. I just wanted to say that on Resmondo, but sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. And then I want to kind of leave. I was going to go to Monster third, but I think it's going to be a good flow into the next segment there. But so MPT. Right now, the argument with MPT, in my opinion, is they just won the Worlds last year. They won the major. They did everything they're supposed to do. Then they come into this season, they make a few changes, and maybe, just maybe, they haven't meshed yet. I mean, we talk about the pitching carousel. There's one pitcher out of all of it. Well, I can't say one. There's two pitchers of the major teams. Travis Clark's, unless he's hurt, something's crazy, he's not coming off mound and resi unless, the big things like that. Pinkham is another one. He's an absolute bulldog up there. He could be cramping, can't walk out of the dugout. He's still going to the mound. Like that's what he does. So it's not really a pitching carousel there as much of a, maybe they, the few ads that they've made in the offseason, big names, great ball players like AC, Kate, and things like that. Maybe that just hasn't meshed yet. DW, what's your opinions on that one? What have you seen?
Yeah, so my notes on MPT, defending champs, right? So sometimes that we've seen over the years, defending champs get a slow start. They've got the slow start, right? 32.5 runs per game per 7 innings. That's a problem. 679 on base percentage with these hard rock balls. That's a problem. 2-8 versus major teams and 5 losses to AA teams. That's a major problem. No Philip Washington hurts. Anytime you don't have an elite hitter that's on your roster in the game, that's going to hurt you as a major team. Ben Dunn, Arjun Dodd's missing. Dale Brungard out with an injured thumb. Most of the team is below 300 or 700. If you can share my screen, you can see the stats for them. They only have 4 guys over 700 on base. Jeff Roxby leading the way, right? 746. They moved him to lead off a little bit last weekend. He's also their backup pitcher when Pinkham was hurt in Myrtle Beach. So they don't have a lot of depth. If you looked over this weekend at MPT's dugout, I think everybody was in the game. Basically, Mark Carucci, the sponsor, was doing some of the running for the pitcher. They had no bench whatsoever. So that's hurt them, and guys not showing up for whatever reasons, and some injuries here and there, and of course the suspension.
It's a big difference. And Eric, what have you seen? I mean, I know you've covered it a lot with the conference primetime. You said we've worked a few games with them together. What have you seen from an MPT standpoint that is kind of sticking out to you?
It's tough to say, honestly. Even with the slim roster, and it's so talented top to bottom. That 1 through 11, regardless of what the numbers are, vicious. It's just they're not getting it done. But yeah, I almost honestly still think it's a little bit of a hangover from Worlds or something like that. Like they got Mark got that monkey off of his back, and they made a few changes. And I would say, at least myself included, and I'm trying to think of the show that we talked about it on, but I mean, I would say that 99% of us thought MPT was going to be better this year, correct? Did you guys both agree there? We thought they were going to be better? Yeah. So, I mean, it's got to be a little bit of a hangover, maybe a little bit of a chemistry thing. I don't know. This is something that I would ask you guys too, because you're there more often than not. You know, is Philip Washington? You think that important in the dugout? I mean, do you think him there helps keep these guys in line at all, or whatever the deal is? But I mean, other than you arguably got the best pure pitcher in the world right now. You got the best shortstop in the world, possibly, top tier, top 2, 3, whatever you want to call it. So I don't have any good answers for him. I don't know what the reasoning is. I see a team that's just not having that bulldog mentality, like you call Pinkham a bulldog. They look defeated at times. They look low on energy at times, like they don't care at times, which again, it's an outsider looking in. I'm not in the dugout. Maybe that's totally wrong, but yeah, there's something missing there right now, and I don't know what it is, because the talent on paper looks great to me.
It definitely could come down to Flip then, because, I mean, Flip is one of those guys that, when you kind of sit and watch them play, you always hear Flip, talking in the dugout. He seems to be one that keeps the mood kind of more upbeat. He still has a high expectation for the guys, kind of like you were talking about with Helmer calling people out. Like, if you do something, like, he'll call you out. He might do it in kind of a joking manner, but he's kind of a calling out type situation, which – I definitely think every team needs that, especially when you have a team full of veterans and or individuals who already know what they're supposed to do. You kind of have to have somebody there that is that one de facto leader. And, we talked about the situation with the bats and everything where, there was a confusion about whether or not Juno's UTH handle was going to be a good one or not, and whether it's going to pass compliance. Maybe that had a little bit of something to do with it. Mark, he could be really focused on making sure that's being taken care of. Took a little bit of focus off the team for a minute. There's a couple different things they've had going on. Injuries, Flip not there, the bat thing. You got a lot of things working against you from a mentality standpoint. And Yogi Berra says hitting a baseball is 90% mental and 10% physical. I mean, that's a big deal for softball too. We don't, as a hitter, we don't make very many outs because the pitcher made us miss. It's normally because we made the out. But then rolling into the next team, that, in my opinion, I think this is going to flow well into the next segment. We're talking about the best defensive teams in the country. From a major defensive side, I personally think, just watching these guys, I think they have potentially the best overall defense. I think what's currently missing for them is, when we talk about the pitching carousel, the open door of pitching that's been Monster currently. I mean, you've had multiple individuals. You had a guy leave in the offseason from Competitive Edge to go over to Monster. He's not even there anymore. They released a USA Future pitcher in Jacobson. Then they bring in a guy in Greg Hardy, which nothing against Greg by any means at all, but he's been a C, D, B class middle infielder in Georgia, and now he's pitching the major level. I mean, DW, what have you seen with Monster? I mean, I feel like they're underperforming. Do you agree there?
Yeah, so my notes on Monster, they won the Hall of Fame duel #1, 6-7 versus major teams this year, 34.9 runs per 7 innings, 692 on base percentage. That's a little bit low considering the hard balls that we're using. Heath Barnes, 715 on base while playing shortstop. 69% of his hits are for extra bases. He's very entertaining to watch and really gloving it. The question mark, as you guys said, is that the pitching carousel we're going to talk about next really plays into Monster's season. Vitsak gone from last year, 4 pitchers in 4 weeks. The last 4 tournaments they played. On-base percentages are low. I have Monster's stats up on the screen if they can share it. Tyler Story's not 100% after being MVP of Hall of Fame #1. He's had some leg injuries since. That seems to be affecting him. The team doesn't have as much star power, but if they can solve the pitching problem and stay healthy, I think they're right there with the other 3 major teams. And you guys hit on it. Culture and accountability at the major level. On Resmondo, you have Bazat, you have Helmer. Helmer can throw out any comment during the game that's kind of calls out the player defensively, and they accept it and they try to do better. And MPT, Philip Washington's missing. Who's really the leader in the dugout? I'm not sure. Looking on the outside, I know Carucci kind of has a laid back feeling. It seems like maybe it's different in the huddle, but it seems like he understands that it's early in the season. They don't have all their players, so like he's kind of taking it pretty well, I think. Competitive edge, obviously, Brandon Miller has accountability with those players. Almost seems a little more private than Helmer and Monsta. Every group huddle they get seems to be led by Jason Magnum. It would be great to have him on the show and ask him about it, but the culture on Monsta is different. Like, he just calls out players in those huddles by name even. So, like, some players can handle that and some can't. That's probably part of the pitching problem.
And Eric, what have you seen? I mean, I know you've worked several of the Monster games, including here recently, like at the beach. I don't know if you worked any while we were in Tennessee, but what have you seen watching this and going through everything with them?
Trying to think if I saw them in Tennessee or not. I think I did one or two maybe. I think they're great. I think they're a pitcher away from being right there with Resmondo and, competitive edge once they get everything figured out. When everybody gets everything figured out, especially Resmondo, competitive edge, and Monster, because MPT is just a little further away from figuring out things than the other three. But if Monster had Lehman for the rest of the year, which I don't know if you guys said that or not. I don't think he did, but Lehman is done for the year from what we're hearing. So, I mean, he's no longer an option there. But I mean, Monster is a pitcher away, and they got Austin Daw, who I think is pretty good. I wouldn't risk my leadoff batter, honestly, getting drilled by one of these death missiles that come off the bat. So, I mean, they're really good. That lineup's really good. They got a decent bench, I think. Like they rotate Kendall Wellborn in there, the old S&E guy, and a few other guys. Steele Lewis is the motor guy, so he's always going to keep everybody going. Matusik is one of the most underrated softball players, I think, that we never talk about. That guy is mega star caliber. He absolutely murders the ball and highly underrated in left field. Like, he gets moving for a big man. He's making sliding catches out there. Yates, I can't see the numbers. They didn't pop up on my screen, but it looks like Yates is having, what are his numbers? I feel like he's having a little bit of a comeback here too, because he looks pretty sharp again after struggling at times last year. I think he was hot at the major last year, but
yeah, Yates has the RBIs and the home runs. On base maybe a little lower than you would like.
Yeah, that's, I'm sure they're telling him to do that though, and he just missed a couple. But yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, Monster to me is a pitcher away from being a serious competitor. If you put Pinkham or Clark on this team, or something like that in the fantasy camp world, they're right there to me. So,
oh yeah, completely agree. I mean, I definitely think that's what's been missing from them. I mean, the folks that they've had on the mound outside of Lehman, and I mean, Hardy did a great job this weekend. I think that they ran into a few walks issues. And we talk about this here in a few minutes from an importance of a pitcher to a softball team. Walking is a big no-no, especially in underhand softball. But we'll get to that in just a minute. But, like I said, I really think that they're arguably the best overall defensive team in the major division. But I don't think that they're the best defensive team in the nation right now. And we're going to go right into that one. And RoofX, I mean, it would be great to have Mucciarelli on this show here, because I think he's been a part of, in my opinion, two of the best defensive teams that have happened in the conference USSSA. And I think it was like the 2019 Pure A team when you had McClanahan at short and Mooch was there and Chint was on the team. Like that was a fantastic defensive squad. And now he is on arguably a better overall defensive team in RoofX. I mean, we thought in the offseason them losing Lehman was going to be such a big deal. And you're sitting here looking at one of the best AA teams in the nation with one of the best defenses, the best overall defenses in the nation. I mean, Eric, I know this is a topic you really wanted to talk about. What have you seen from a RoofX standpoint that you're just like, man, they're good. Like, what's going on here?
RoofX, I think this past weekend finally put, that last weekend we saw the RoofX that we're accustomed to, and like the major teams we were just talking about, there's probably, they got some new pieces there, with McClanahan and Mooch and stuff, and it's a little bit different culture wise, I'm sure, so they took them a few tournaments to get going here, but they're full rolling. It was full blown excitement watching them play major teams again. And I don't want to say that they weren't hustling before, or anything like that, because we know that's their shtick, right? But they just didn't look the same. But they looked so laser focused this weekend. They were locked on in that. The defense is insane. I know DW's got the exact numbers on it, so I'm not going to steal his thunder there. But Mooch is basically taking control of innings by himself, and getting outs out there by himself. I don't want to confuse their names. Brandon Yoder, the center fielder, is incredible. Arliss Miller over and right is running into fences. He's diving all around, and it's that mentality. And we know that they get together and practice, right? So, I mean, that's probably part of it too. Like, these guys are just getting their swings. They're getting better. They're getting going. They're moving. And I think that they didn't look like maybe top tier AA team at the beginning of the year, but now that everything's rolling again, I think that we're going to see them right back battling at the top of that AA division and hopefully knocking off a few major teams so that we can all get excited about it on the live stream.
What have you seen, DW? I know that you got more of a numbers-wise standpoint on this, and I mean,
yeah, we don't have a lot of defensive stats to throw out, but I just wanted to go over how this team was built. 6 starters from last year's Rock run. The corner outfielders, Marcus and Arliss Miller. The brothers, middle infielder, Jeremy Fry, and second baseman, Farron Fry. The catcher, Terry Lambright, and the DH, Kyle Miller. Those 6 guys are returning starters from the Rock Run team. They all live right there in Topeka, Indiana area. Then they picked up John Troyer, third base, and Joey Miller, first base from WM Roofing, an Ohio non-conference team. And one of their sponsor managers is Mike Yoder from WM Roofing. He put that conference team together a couple of years ago. They were non-conference last year. His brother is Brandon Yoder, the center fielder they picked up. So it's kind of all in the family there. When they couldn't get Eric Lehman to return at pitcher, they went and got Justin Mucciarelli, who had been supplying them with the pure bats. Anyways, so they had a relationship there. Mooch comes in to pitch, and then Mooch, of course, is real good friends with Ryan McClanahan. We joke that Ryan is Mooch's son. McClanahan is a 2-time conference defensive player of the year and a backup pitcher on the team. And then when Jacobson left Monsta, I think they were short players this past weekend, so they picked up Jacobson. He may just stick for the rest of the season. He hit it pretty good. He's another pitcher. That way they don't have to use McClanahan at pitcher. So I just wanted to go over how this team was built. David, you give your opinion on defensive team who's the best defensive team in the country is the question of this segment, and then come back to me, and I got some more notes on this.
I mean, from watching several games and having played them, we played them in Texas on the big field. And, I mean, I felt like any ball that we hit, if it wasn't a clear-cut gap, odds are we were out. I have yet to feel that way on any other team other than them.
Yeah.
And, and that's even going back in several years back of playing ball that, like, it's just like, okay, I can miss a little bit to this guy's right-hand side. I'm going to be okay. No, you miss a little bit, and they're making a play, and they're making it faster than you're getting really out of the box. I mean, the youth is definitely a benefit for them, but at the same standpoint, I mean, they're just making plays left and right, and then you got, like, we talk about pitching and whether or not it's a big, like, changing factor there. Mooch is one of the few pitchers left in the game that I think truly like makes a big difference. And I say that knowing that I'm a pitcher, and I say that knowing that sometimes I feel like I make a great difference and sometimes not so much. But I mean, he when he is there and on it, and it's definitely going to happen at AA Worlds because look at what he did with Bay Area last year. It's a big deal, big difference. I mean, there's nobody else that really sticks out of my head that's like, this is the team that's going to compete with him defensively. I mean, dirt, turf, doesn't matter. They pick everything.
With a left-handed third baseman, too. Is Troyer left-handed, right?
No, that was the WM roofing guy from last year.
Okay.
Or a couple of years ago.
So I saw him field left-handed this weekend.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say was other teams have the best defensive player at a given position, right? You could say Barnes at shortstop right now, JoJo Bennett, corner outfielder, maybe Kirsten's arguably the best defensive center fielder. There's a few other guys that would challenge that. Marshburn can be the best defensive player at any position on a given weekend, right? Bazat's healthy now. He made some phenomenal plays, and so on and so on. But RoofX has a pitcher in Mooch that gets strikeouts, he gets mishits, and with RoofX, their range, like you talked about, Dave, they will go after every ball. So he just needs a half mishit, right? He doesn't need a full mishit to have a chance to get a play made behind him. And that's what those guys live for. And even after 5-6 games and 3 days of playing, they're still going after every ball like it's a chance to get an out. Other teams by Sunday morning, major teams, I'm going to use the word lazy in a way that we all understand that have been around the game, right? The ball's in the gap. You feel like it's pretty much a double. You don't go after it 100%, right? These guys go after it 100%. They hit the cutoff. They try to get that 1 in 20 chance of throwing that guy out at second base. This past weekend, loser bracket final, which came down to 1-run loss against MPT. The RoofX catcher backed up the throw at first base that went all the way to the dugout, and the MPT runner turned and took 2 steps towards second, and they picked him off of first base. So they never give up on a play. Mooch knows that as a pitcher, and I think that mix is phenomenal. Jeremy Fry may be the best defensive middle infielder, arguably, top 5 for sure. Brandon Yoder is starting to get experience in center field. He absolutely flies. Like, he's probably the fastest center fielder in the game. And I think if you just average every position, I think they are the best defensive team in the country. They're a major plus level defense.
Yep, completely agree. And not to take anything away from their hitting, because watching them play, we finished up on Friday night and watched them play Epic, and they hit I think it was Marcus was the one who hit. He had like 2 balls up near the road on field 1. Yeah. I mean, that's
he touching. Unloaded on a couple of those.
Yes, that was touching it. And then you watched him playing this in the Tennessee Tech Stadium, and he was hitting them like they were free. So, they're not just good defensively. These guys are starting to really, really hit.
Hey, I believe Marcus Miller is between 150 and 155 pounds. And you're right. He reminded me of Adam Rockoff. He got a certain pitch up in the zone, and he knew he was hitting it out of this. And I think he ended up with 10 home runs. Maybe even a majority of those were in the baseball stadium.
A couple batters in front of him, too, was John Troyer, and I called a game on Conference Primetime where Troyer had maybe 4 homers and 14 RBIs, or 4 homers, 12 RBIs, something like that. And he's he might be 10 pounds more than Marcus Miller, if that. They got to be pretty close.
Yeah. and these guys in the dugout, if a guy makes an out, they don't say pick him up. They say let's get all the way back to that guy. And when you have a hard ball and their confidence is up, they often get right back to that guy and give him another chance that inning.
There's a gene in softball that's beneficial, and they're almost too stupid to know they should ever lose, right? That's basically the best quality you can have in softball when you're playing teams that are a level above you or anything. Like, be too stupid to know you should lose this. Be too stupid to know you shouldn't get this hit. And just they're fantastic. What a team for the conference.
Yep.
That's a great segue into the next segment. We're talking about the pitching carousel. Folks that are too stupid to realize that you're 50 feet away from people hitting a ball 100+ miles per hour. So we're going into that. So from a pitching carousel standpoint, we talk about roster moves. The folks on Old Scout said they really want to address roster moves. I mean, we've had, it seems like outside of maybe 1, 2, 3 people, if you count Mooch, no pitching job is safe in the conference right now. And it seems like it's a revolving door. I mean, Munster, you had LC there, you've had Jacobson there, you've had Lehman there, you've had Hardy there. They may change from Hardy again. I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Daw has pitched. Don't forget Daw. He's on the team, but he has
pitched. I mean, that's a huge thing. Then you get like RoofX adding Jacobson. Mooch still pitches until he gets his foot blown off. And then he has to come out, understandable. When your foot's black and blue and you can't put pressure on it, you're out of there. And then you got what's been one of the most surprising is Nitro Circus. I mean, they added what a lot of folks thought was going to be, even though he's a little bit older, in Brian Renner, they thought he was going to be the next guy that was going to be up there at the major level and stay in there for a long time. They added him. Now he's not even on the roster, and they added Jose Flores, which, I mean, some people have the opinion of Jose's not very good, but it seems like he's always there late Saturdays and Sundays. So, I mean, it's wild and crazy. I mean, Eric, I know this is one of those things that we've talked about multiple times, and I think that you and I are of the same belief that pitching is more important than other people may give credit to. What's your thoughts on all the changes? Like, I mean, do you feel like you understand why it's happening? I mean, what's going on here with the pitching standpoint?
I think, well, actually, first let me say, because he's on our list here, and I reached out to him specifically for this show just to see what was going on. Brian Renner, unless something changes, Brian Renner is done for the year. He's basically still not healthy from S&E a couple of years ago when he got hurt at Worlds or before Worlds. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I talked to him, and he said, he knows there's a ton of rumors floating around. There's certainly no ill will between himself and Nitro Circus. They put him on the roster in hopes that he might be able to come back in the second half of the year, and it's just, we'll see if it happens. Maybe we'll get lucky and catch him somewhere. I certainly hope so. And he wanted to say hi to Joel too. But yeah, so where we're at, I mean, Jose to me is a great topic. Jose has been a hot topic on the Old Scout message board before. I mean, it's something that looks simple, and I obviously have I am of the opinion that pitching are probably the most important spot on the team. I mean, you definitely need an awesome hitter, you need a really good shortstop and a really good center fielder, but pitchers that can get you a couple extra outs are huge. And Jose's been a topic of that before. Like I was just saying, people give him some flack, like they say he's not that good, this, that, and the other thing. You cannot argue with his track record of success between Proton, My Auto Jack, and Bay Area Legends. I don't think he's finished outside the top 10 in conference point standings. Chris Benigno gave me that stat. Like his final season finishes, even with My Auto Jack A team, I think that team finished 7th overall in the conference as an A team a couple of years ago. So Flores to me is an absolute game changer for Nitro Circus, and that's not a knock. I don't know why Sean Jones didn't work out there, because I got nothing but respect for Sean Jones, and I think he's great, and I thought that they were going to be great with him. That didn't work, obviously. So Jose, I think, is going to come in there and be a difference maker right away. Nitro Circus just got bumped to, which we already knew they were going to compete in AA anyway, but now Nitro Circus, I think, is one of the favorites to be a contender. Maybe you guys disagree there, but Jose puts them over that line for me. Jose is an absolute bulldog out there too. He's a gamer. He's not afraid to get hit, and he gets people out. So can't argue with it for me. Dale,
you watch a ton of softball. You're always there. You see everything. I mean, you were there watching consistently in the days of Andy taking 5 to 10 runs away from teams. I mean, do you feel like the pitching carousel is changing like this because maybe the ball is a little bit harder more consistently? You think that it's harder to get misses? What do you think is going on here with why it's such an open door?
Yeah, both of you guys are pitchers. I am not. Obviously, I don't hit against these guys. From the outside looking in, I think Jose Flores is a great move for Nitro Circus. Does it change them from being I think they're 1-7 against AA teams? Does that push them up to 500? I don't know. I think their problems may be deeper than that. But RoofX getting Jacobson. Mooch did pitch the first 4 games. He was 4-0. He got hit in the heel, back of the heel. Might have been Josh. Or wait, no, I can't remember who hit him, but he wasn't walking very good after that. So Jacobson took over and did Jacobson gave them a chance to win. RoofX, he'll be fine there if he sticks. Like I said, I think Greg Hardy did a good job. The game I watched against Competitive Edge, between Monster and Competitive Edge, Hardy did a good job. He hit the ball. He made that great play at first base. Check out the condensed game. I think we didn't touch on all the free agents that are available. Renner's out, right? He doesn't have the mobility with the knee injury. He hasn't recovered. So he's pretty much out. L.C. Watson's still out there. Sean Jones, Corey Miller, Scott Creekmore. Eric listed all those free agent pitchers. I'm sure there's probably a more we didn't think of. I think Monster's solution. Call Eric Lehman every week, see if he'll come back. When he says no, go get Mike Nino. Mike Nino's was on LNS Glass. I guess you guys are saying he was picked up by Straight Play. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think Cholo and a handful of guys from the LNS team went to Straight Play, I believe. Did you confirm that, David? Did you actually see that on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, it's on the roster moves.
It's on the roster moves. If I was Monster, I would call Lehman each week, maybe twice a week, and then go after Nino.
I mean, my only thought about that is realistically, if we're talking about the difference now between pitchers, is that you want somebody who's going to sit there and hit pretty well, catch most of everything that you can. I'm talking about defensive pitchers, and not walk a lot of people. The number one that sticks out in my mind there's 2, but the one that sticks out the most to me from a standpoint of kind of been there, done that, is Sean Jones. I mean, he's already free. You don't have to get him off the Straight Play. He's free right there. That in my opinion, that makes perfect sense for Monster. That's just outside looking in. I mean, I don't know, what all they've got going on over there, but I mean, Jonesy catches the ball rather well. I'm pretty sure he plays like he was a hockey goalie or something. He might still do so. I mean, you can catch a hockey puck. You can catch a softball. It's pretty.
He's hitting it good too this year, Jones.
Exactly.
Really
so, I mean, it's a good answer. I mean, in my opinion, personally, it's kind of a slap in the face that, like, Greg Hardy got called by a monster team or by a major team. That's neither here nor there, but it is a little bit of a slap in the face because you got guys down in the AA level that are not getting these phone calls because people are saying now that there's no real game-changing pitchers. You as a pitcher, you are really only as good as your defense behind you, but there's still a difference. I think Jason Martell said this a few years back. If you watch the really good pitchers compared to the ones that are just kind of good, watch the miss hits. There's a difference between a one-hopper in the infield and then the 2 hops that come off of a good miss-hitting pitcher. That's a big, big, big difference. I mean, think about how many outs would happen if you give 2 hops to those RoofX guys. I mean,
I just thought of Jeff Grouse. Jeff Grouse also, maybe he retired because he's not on the roster.
On the Seminoles roster?
I thought Jeff Grouse went to the Bay Area folks with Cashwell on them. That's who I thought. I mean, I may be wrong, but I feel like that was discussed. I'm not sure if it actually happened, but I feel like it was discussed. Could be wrong there, but I feel like it's discussed. And then moving on past this, wrapping this particular episode up, looking at the Windy City bracket, kind of a look ahead here in Chicago. This is giving the old school last year conference tournament feel where you've got some local teams having a chance, got some playing games. Siteman, I love David Garland and Matt Petroff to death, but they're talking about we have a great draw. We're playing a good AA team into the only major team of the tournament. It's going to be a fun time in Chicago, a little chilly. Who do y'all have winning Chicago? I mean, obviously Competitive Edge is probably the number one there, but what do y'all have finishing first, second, third in Chicago?
Go ahead, DW.
Yeah, if you can share my screen, I have the bracket for this weekend up. The Windy City Classic. We played on 4 300-foot fields at McCaslin Park. I believe, like David said, the weather's supposed to be maybe a little cooler, especially in the evenings. Ball usually flies there. It's windy. Some fields will see games in the 50s for sure. I think that gives everyone in this tournament a chance. Comatose and the Herd from Wisconsin and Iowa, respectively, non-conference A teams. The Herd, did they finish first or second at the ASAA last year? I can't remember. They were right there at the end of that tournament. I think they have Rettenmeyer and Ellwanger. Comatose finished, was it second at the other Chicago tournament last year to West Point?
Yep.
They had,
Yes.
Last year, at least, they had Gino and Ty Buck, the father-son duo. They were really good at that tournament. They're really good on 300-foot fields. So they can be a threat to JBL and Chick-fil-A in that first game. And then the most interesting thing of this tournament, Topeka, Indiana has 3 teams in this tournament. RoofX, AA team, right? They're a threat to win this weekend. But then they have Cedar Creek and Rock Run Cabinetry C teams that play in their league up there. And I tell you what, these kids are going to bring it. Tune in to USSSA Live Friday at 5 o'clock for Cedar Creek and Rock Run. And let's not forget about J&L Sports out of Ohio. That's kind of like a similar team to the WM Roofing team from the past few years. So I like this tournament as well as any tournament I've been to this year. I think, prime time's due for a run. Rebel had a little bit of run in Tennessee. Nitro Circus has the new pitching, and I don't know, they seem to be missing players last week. JBL is a threat to win this tournament. They got a nice spot, and we know Chick-fil-A can win on 300-foot fields because they did so in Texas. So it's wide open. I have Competitive Edge winning. I think I picked Chick-fil-A second, RoofX third, and JBL fourth.
It's a pretty good one. Eric, what do you got?
It's hard to bet against Competitive Edge. And actually, interesting that you speak of primetime and pitchers moving around. Rod Armour was supposed to go to the Dan Smith Proton Major team a couple of years ago, never ended up going. But since I'm figuring on Lehman's never going to come back, they're not going to pay Nino enough money to pitch. Rod might be my next phone call on that list. But yeah, obviously Competitive Edge major team. I'm going to go ahead and say that they're the favorite to win this. If Nitro Circus has got everybody there, if Jose's going to be there, they were missing Nick Day last weekend. They had to pick up a few guys off the street even to play. And we haven't mentioned Joe Caparelli's name once. Having an outstanding season on Nitro Circus. I hope you guys can get the stat ordeal figured out because I know there's some confusion there, and I would like that kid to be eligible for Conference Rookie of the Year because I think he's got a serious shot at it. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say Competitive Edge, Nitro Circus, and I'm going to go wild card here. I'm going to put Rebel up there. I think Rebel has had a couple of nice tournaments this year. They've been playing well. So, and they're just every one of these tournaments, when you pick the teams that you think are going to be there, or maybe the ones that should be there on paper, it never works out. So Rebel's my third.
And Chicago has a history of major upsets. Remember Nitro Circus? Nitro Circus won the winner's bracket final as an A team last year. We had TG Brand in the past make it to Sunday. Like, we've seen entire sides of the bracket get wiped out in Chicago.
Yeah, well, it's the 300-foot wild cards, right? When you get 300-foot fields, a little bit of wind, and the equipment that we use today, it's a game, levels out the playing field a little bit.
Completely agree. Well, I'm gonna go 100% homer on this, and I'm gonna say that we're gonna go to the sit back game after putting West Point, and then Competitive Edge. I'm going to continue my current undefeated against Competitive Edge in Chicago streak, and they're going to the losers bracket early. We'll go win the sit-back game against, if I remember correctly, who's at the top of the bracket. I'm going to go against JBL, and so we're going to finish first. JBL finished third. Chick-fil-A will, not Chick-fil-A, but Competitive Edge will finish second, but pushing us to an if game. That's what I'm going to go with. So we'll go with giving Brandon Miller a little bit of bulletin board material there for the boys, but we'll go with that and be able to wrap that particular piece up there. So of course we always want to thank everybody for joining us here in USSSA Live. Eric, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts, anything for today?
I just wanted to touch. We skipped off it a little quick. I want to go back to the free agent pitchers quick for my final thought. L.C. Watson obviously proven. Sean Jones, I think the world of, won an A Worlds a couple years ago with Classic Glass. It's he throws like a 10-foot loft pitch a lot, and for some reason it gets everybody out, so that's good. Corey Miller is going to be playing in the Palm Springs Major. I know that with a Clint Stricker team, which has some conference flavor to it. Adam Smiley there, Gavin Littledike there, the outfielder sponsor from BTR last year. I can't remember his name, but Corey really capable, and Scott Creekmore pitched awesome for West Point the last couple of years, and I am in shock that he has not gotten a phone call since SVC folded and his name was on that board. I think there's a lot of teams looking for pitchers out there, and Watson, Jones, Miller, and Creekmore can all win games for you in A and AA. So hopefully one of these guys gets a phone call off of this, and I'm rooting for all four of them. But other than that, thank you, DW, thank you, David, thank you, Bernie. It was really fun to be a part of this, and join me on the Conference Primetime channel every weekend. We do that, and I bounce around games like NFL Red Zone. Sometimes we just stick me on the main field. It depends on the bracket, but thank you guys for all joining me there and all the support we've gotten there, and thank you guys for having me on your show. Absolutely. Hopefully, we meaning Siteman make some good games that have you covering us this weekend. I'd love to hear your feedback on all that. I'm rooting for it. I would too. My only final thought, I do want to give a good shout out to my good friend Ryan Honeycutt. He's got his new signature bat with Suncoast. One of the best guys in softball. Love him to death. He also a former Giant, so he's one of the near and dear to my heart. It's a big Giants fan, so it's I'm really excited for him to have his first signature bat. It's really awesome. DW, what do you got for your final thoughts for this week? Yeah, so Siteman has never made it to a condensed game, so there's some bulletin board material for you. Maybe we'll see someone new this week. Conference Cares BSC All-Stars versus Conference All-Stars game is Thursday, June 15th. Don't miss that one. It's going to be a grudge match on USSSALive.com. June 15th in Columbus, Georgia. Rumored to be changing the venue from softball field to the baseball field at South Commons Park in Columbus, Georgia. That's going to be a good one. Brian Metallic, hope I'm saying that right, former conference sponsor and player with Detroit's Own, has his new apparel company, G Brand. That's the hat I got here, so I want to thank him for helping me out with the hats. I got to have gray and black hats. That's what I always wear. But that's about it. 5 p.m. Central Time this Friday, Windy City Classic. You may look at it and say it's not that great a field of team. This is going to be a good tournament. Watch the hustle out of these C teams, and then see if any of them can upset a conference team this weekend. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we always talk about every conference event is still most likely the best event in the country that weekend. So it's always a good thing to have. But again, everybody, we always want to thank you. We tried a little bit different of an approach today with our Hit and Sit podcast. I think it's going to work really well. We always enjoy having everyone here. Thank you all for joining us. This has been USSSA Hit and Sit, episode number 20.